Okay, next up we've got Sam Gray from the University of Maryland. Talking about assessing pre-service music educators' preparedness and attitudes toward teaching students with disabilities across Big Ten institutions. I had to scroll far to the right to finish that.
I know, I was just about to say, that seems like a really long title.
Yeah, who chose that?
I wonder why. Awesome, let's make sure this still functions. Epic. All right, well, we're gonna go back to the beginning, friends, rather than in the middle of everything. Hello, my name is, as mentioned, Sam Gray. I'm a third-year doctoral student at the University of Maryland. Go Terrapins. And I'll be presenting on my study titled, not the title, not just the title, but my study titled, Assessing Big Ten Pre-Service Music Educators' Preparedness and Attitudes Towards Teaching Students with Disabilities. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge that this research is supported by the Mad Lab at the University of Maryland, which is funded by the National Endowment of the Arts. The opinions expressed in this presentation are that of my own. As a former choir teacher in a public charter school, which served as a magnet for students with disabilities, and my own personal belief that music education is for all, this study, the purpose of this study was to examine the attitudes and preparation of Big Ten affiliated pre-service music educators as they navigate the complexities of inclusive education. This study is guided by a theoretical framework integrating the social model of disability, self-efficacy theory, and experiential learning theory to examine pre-service music educators' perceptions of their preparedness to teach students with disabilities. The social model of disability frames educator preparedness as a function of removing societal barriers to inclusive education. Within this model, institutional resources share opportunities for pre-service educators to engage in experiential learning through mentorship and practicum experiences. These experiences foster in interactions with students with disabilities, which are critical for developing self-efficacy in inclusive teaching. As pre-service educators gain confidence and experience, their comfort and willingness to teach inclusively increases, leading to greater educator preparedness. This framework underscores how institutional structures, hands-on experiences, and self-efficacy work together to enhance inclusive teaching readiness amongst Big Ten university music prep programs. My first objective was to explore variation in Big Ten pre-service music educator prep programs on how they prepare pre-service music educators for teaching students with disabilities. This exploration led me to seek a survey instrument for replication or adaptation, and then at the very bottom of this, that led me in ultimately resting at identifying pre-service music educators' comfort, attitudes, and beliefs on teaching students with disabilities. There are three areas of literature surrounding this topic of study. First is the survey instrument itself for pre-service music educators. Second is pre-service music educator perceptions, and third is music educator preparedness. Using the purpose of this study, the objectives driven from literature and from the literature review, I came up with three research questions. The first being, how do pre-service music educators at Big Ten institutions perceive their preparedness for instructing students with disabilities? The second, what are the attitudinal differences among pre-service music educators regarding their comfort and willingness to teach students with disabilities across Big Ten institutions? And the third, how do practicum field experiences influence pre-service music educators' perceptions of their ability to effectively teach students with disabilities? In a descriptive adapted survey design, I utilized the original 17-item 5-point Likert design of Van Willen and Whipple's survey of PME comfort, attitudes, and beliefs. I made relevant adaptations with the aim of highlighting different ways PMEs experience coursework regarding students with disabilities. An important note, Van Willen and Whipple don't give out one formal definition of disability. Instead, their study operationalizes the term through two practicum contexts and two practicum groups that pre-service music educators worked with. One group of students described as emotional and behavioral disabilities, and the other being autism spectrum disorder or extensive learning disabilities. I utilized convenience sampling of music education, asking music education faculty to forward on this survey to their students. Participants must have been a degree-seeking pre-service music educator enrolled at a Big Ten university. A total of 122 responses were recorded, and with 87 being complete at the end of data collection. Before we get into results, it's important to note that these are participants' perceptions, which are informed by their experience and not that of the institutions or departments themselves. Participants self-identified which academic year they were, with the majority being sophomores. Here is a breakdown of participants by institution, noting that Ohio State University had the highest level of participation. Due to this breakdown and how some institutions are more represented than others, there is a need to interpret the following results with an air of caution. Participants were pretty evenly split when asked if they had an opportunity to interact with students with disability in practicum as a pre-service music educator. Similarly, a near even split on participants who self-reported that their preparatory program had a dedicated course on the topic of teaching students with disabilities. 46% of participants stated they did have units of coursework devoted to teaching students with disabilities. 54% stated they did not. This contrasts with more participants who stated they did have a dedicated course on the topic. Participants provided self-assessments of their comfort in interacting with various student groups. As shown in this table, they reported the highest level of comfort levels with middle school students and students with physical disabilities. Comfort levels were slightly lower for interacting with students with mental and emotional disabilities. Regarding adaptations, the majority of participants strongly agree that lesson adaptations should be included when planning to instruct students with disabilities. In terms of participant beliefs, most believe that music ed should be a part of the curriculum for teaching students with disabilities. Over 70% agree or strongly agree that students with disabilities can learn the same musical material as other students their age. And over 70% agree or strongly agree that students with disabilities behave in the class the same as other students their age. Participants self-reported their own perceived adequacy of their training regarding students with disabilities, and it varied across different teaching contexts. Ratings were lowest for music ensemble settings, followed by private music studio settings, like one-on-one, and secondary general music classes. These results indicate that participants felt less prepared for certain practical teaching contexts when considering that a lot of our classes at the secondary level are generally ensembles. In terms of participants' willingness to teach students with disabilities, participants self-reported a high degree of willingness across various contexts. The strongest agreement was observed for special education classrooms, followed by general music classrooms and secondary performance ensembles. One of the most quirky and interesting results came from the survey item using the term music ensemble. Responses showed that this particular spread happened. And this spread kind of suggests that the term ensemble was not interpreted consistently by participants. Importantly, Van Willen and Whipple did not clarify or differentiate what they meant by music ensemble versus secondary performance ensemble. And because of that, this kind of highlights the need for greater clarity, and we heard about that earlier today with our plenary session, using terminology, using speech, the clarity of language matters when we are conducting research, and being as specific as we can is ever more important during these times. In closing, pre-service music educators participating in this study from various Big Ten institutions report differing levels of perceived preparedness. While many express willingness and comfort in working with students with disabilities, they often feel less prepared in terms of formal training and instructional strategies. This aligns with the social model of disability, which emphasizes the role of institutional structures in shaping access to inclusive education. Participants demonstrated a high willingness to engage with students with disabilities across music education settings. However, self-reported comfort levels varied, influenced by prior exposure, training, and the extent to which their institution prioritizes inclusive education. As self-efficacy theory suggests, beliefs and attitudes towards teaching students with disabilities are shaped by personal experiences and the perceived adequacy of preparation. Lastly, experiential learning opportunities such as practicum placements and mentorship significantly impact PME's perceptions of preparedness. Consistent with experiential learning theory, participants indicated that direct engagement in practicum settings enhance instructional confidence. However, the availability and structure of these experiences differ across institutions. This study includes participants from multiple Big Ten institutions. So in terms of limitations, some institutions are more heavily represented than others. That creates an imbalance in the sample size and an unequal sample of the Big Ten as a whole. Secondly, and kind of thirdly, there is potential bias in self-selection and also social desirability bias, since participation was voluntary, which may have led to both of those particular things regarding their PME's comfort, willingness, and abilities in working with students with disabilities. And then in terms of generalizability, due to this being a sample of all Big Ten PMEs, findings should be interpreted with caution when generalizing across institutions. Onto the implications and future directions for this study. First, as many of us know, pre-service music education curricula is crucial. This could include integrating experiential learning opportunities consistently across programs in the Big Ten, a dedicated course, spiral curriculum, or targeted experiential learning components focused on teaching students with disabilities could be potential ways to aid in covering the topic of inclusion. Another key area is the frequency and nature of curriculum visits. Offering a broad range of experiences like observing, co-teaching, and solo teaching can help pre-service music educators develop a deeper sense of confidence and preparedness when working with diverse student populations. In terms of future study, tracking perceptions of preparedness as they evolve from pre-service through to in-service in a longitudinal design could provide valuable insights into that shift, offering a fuller picture of how well programs are preparing educators over time. And one further area of study is examining specific preparatory models like those used across the various Big Ten universities and how they affect students with pre-service music educators, students' self-efficacy and willingness to engage with students with disabilities. All told, pre-service music education programs within the Big Ten are uniquely positioned to lead the way in preparing future educators to serve all students, including those with disabilities. To move the field forward, accessibility must be framed not as supplemental accommodation, but as a guiding principle embedded throughout coursework, practicum experiences, and teacher preparation, so that it becomes integral to the identity and practice of music teacher education. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Really nicely done. I love the structure of everything that you showed here. I have a question about those that stated that they had interactions with students with disabilities. Is that from their experience in their degree program, or is that of all existence of their experience, they could have theoretically had that experience in their own public education before coming to?
Right, specifically in the Van Wielden and Whipple's survey that I adapted, it says specifically to their practicum teaching experience.
I see, okay.
Yeah, yeah, so that's limiting to that one particular area, yeah.
Very nice presentation. I would be interested, and maybe you have some insight about this, of how these results may change if you're saying something like the ACC, or like a different kind of school coalition. Do you have any idea of how maybe that would change? You know, what is particularly interesting about the Big Ten when it comes to, you know, PME preparations and things like that?
Right, at least in my experience, so the degree I'm currently getting is the first degree I've gotten in the Big Ten. The rest have come from other institutions, both in the Western United States and in upper Minnesota, upper Wisconsin. And so for me, there's a little bit of a looking at what we do even here at BTAA, and how, like I'm thinking about earlier today, some of the conversations that were held in this very room about how, what can we offer, and what is the purpose of the Big Ten as an academic alliance, and how do we operationalize that in our society more than just what we're currently doing, each institution kind of not necessarily siloed, but also still connected. There isn't really something as strong as the Big Ten in terms of that. And so I think that while there is variation, I specifically, and this is kind of a future potential dissertation work that I'm looking at, is looking at policies in states and how they differ in terms of educator preparedness, music educator preparedness, because certain states require a dedicated course in teaching students with disabilities. Other states, it's spiraled in their particular curriculum, and that variation causes some changes in program design, even in the Big Ten, which is part of the reason why the results may have looked this particular way. So there's definitely more there, though. I hope I answered your question.
I think we need to move on to the final paper.
Sounds good. No. Thank you.
Last in this session is Eva George from Penn State, presenting vertical creativity.